Hi, my name is Jamie Krupka, Vice President of Programming for the ODC Network, and I'm here in the Macatawa Marsh. You can even see right over my shoulder there, got the windmill at Windmill Island. I'm out to explore the marsh today. I know it's not the best day. I just had a sprinkle a moment ago. I think I just see some sprinkles again on the water. It's a little chilly, a little windy. That's okay. Not going to hurt me. I'm not that sweet. So we're going to explore the marsh. The Macatawa Marsh is where the Macatawa River, just beyond Windmill Island, starts to open up. Lots of cattails, there's cottonwoods, lots of dead standing trees this time of the year. It's actually a really high water level right now, so I got up further into the marsh today than I ever have. So I'm actually almost to the channel that is over by Windmill Island. And you usually can't get up that far. It's a really active morning in the marsh. When I first got here, I was hearing a lot of Canada geese, mallard ducks. There's sora. I'm hoping to hear or see some sora with you all today. I did actually see some before. And most excitingly, when I first got here, I was out looking. There was gulls flying overhead, and there was a short-eared owl flying over the marsh. Totally cool. It's an endangered species in the state of Michigan, and it actually was flying right out over the marsh. They're sometimes called a marsh owl. Typically, they're going to be hunting during the nighttime or early morning, early evening, you know, that like crepuscular time frame it's called. But for whatever reason, this owl was flying right over the top of the marsh, but then it got up to be like 200 feet above the water, and it was just kind of like hanging out with gulls. It was the craziest thing. And sure enough, I didn't have my camera to get a picture, but scored a short-eared owl over the Macatawa Marsh this morning. So that was super cool. As I get through the marsh here, I'm hoping not to lose my phone into the water. Sorry, Sarah, if I do. We have a lot of birds that I'll try to point out as I go. I'll flip the camera here in a moment, and we'll end up exploring the marsh, checking out birds, tree swallows, barn swallows, northern rough-winged swallows, and a whole host of other critters. It's too cold today to be looking for turtles. I actually was going to bring a net with me, but it's too cold. It's something like 45 degrees, not very warm, a little bit rainy, cloudy. So no turtles. I don't expect to see any frogs today. You never know. I mean, I will certainly keep my eye open. But at this point, I'm expecting more like the bird wildlife than the reptile and amphibian. Okay. So I'm going to turn the camera around here in just a moment. I just, again, wanted to welcome you guys that are there. That's happened before. My wife says, I don't know what she's talking about. I've never dropped anything of hers into water or anything like that. I don't know what she's talking about. So I'm going to flip the camera here so you can kind of see where I'm going. Again, I'm near Windmill Island. You can see actually over my shoulder, there's one windmill, and I'm right in the middle of the Macatawa Marsh. I paddled by a whole bunch of Canada geese and mallard ducks and all sorts of birds, so I'm trying not to disturb them too much. I'll see if I can get close enough to some nests. Maybe there's some geese on a nest I'll be able to share with you. But again, I'm going to do my best to not disturb the wildlife too awfully much as I sit here in my kayak in the Macatawa Marsh. All right, so let's get going here. I'm going to get myself out of my little cove that I was in, and I'm going to flip the camera so you can see what I'm seeing. All right, so there we go. So a lot of the cattails that we're seeing here are our native cattail. It's the common cattail, though there are some non-native species that's called the narrow-leaf cattail. I don't see any at the moment. So as we look out and we see cattails, there you can kind of pick up, maybe in the camera view, there's some cattails that only have that one seed head up at the top. It's one continuous seed head. That is our native one. Oh, I see a good one right behind me here that I think the camera will do a better job of seeing. So these are all, it appears to be our native cattail. Certainly possible there's some hybridization, but those cattail you see in front of you with the windmill behind, I believe are common cattail, our native one. They actually are floating on the water too, so I've just pushed a nice little mass of cattail roots out of the way. The water level's so high that a lot of the plants have been dislodged from their the place where they were growing, which is okay. They're well adapted to that. There's a lot of really cool adaptations that exist on animals and plants, both here in the marsh. All right. So now you can see I'm opening up to some water. Those of you familiar with the area can see I'm looking over there at Freedom Village, a retirement community here in the Holland area. There we go. We have our new Holland Energy Park and the power plant in the distance. Birds flying right in front of me. Oh, there was a barn swallow just a moment ago. Tree swallow. That was a tree swallow that zoomed through. They actually go right over top of the water. There you go. There was another tree swallow that just zoomed in front of me there. They're going right over top of the water. Maybe I'll be able to turn the corner here. Maybe they'll hunt for me. So they're either grabbing insects on the surface of the water, or they're actually taking a drink. Oh, that little guy right in front of me didn't quite touch the water surface, but so very close. So these are tree swallows and barn swallows. One more species of swallow you might find down here is called the northern rough-winged swallow. Barn swallows are the ones that have a forked tail. So as you see them flying, it almost looks like they have extra long, like two extra long legs tailing behind them. Whereas the tree swallow, the males have a very shiny blue-green back and a white belly. And you see white all the way up through their throat. There you go, just one flew in front of me there. The northern rough-winged swallow is the less common one. It's brown on the back, kind of whitish cream color on the belly, but the throat has kind of a brown color too. So that's the biggest difference between the tree and the... Sorry, just looking at the tree swallow and the northern rough-winged swallow, in that you can see their white throat on a tree swallow and you cannot on a northern rough-wing. It's kind of like a buffy brown color. So we have a couple of nests I think I'm going to be able to get by over here. I see in front of me, I see a couple of Canada geese that I'm hoping I'll go slower, so maybe you'll get a chance to see them before they freak out too much as I try to cruise through here. Whoopsie. See? Almost lost it, Sarah. There we go, off to my right. A little bit right of center, we've got a pair of geese. The one to the left looks like the female. The one to the right looks like the male. Slightly thicker neck on the male of the Canada geese. I don't believe they have a nest over there. I was watching them before, and I didn't see a nest in that particular area. Look at this flooded area over here. I mean, look, these are trees that are typically, they're on pretty dry land. So this is all where all the force of the water of the river brings up sediment and deposits it here in the marsh. That's actually what the marsh is here for, is to just kind of collect all the sediment. All these cattails are doing a really good job. Of slowing down the water, dropping all the sediments out. And actually our lake, that's Lake Macatawa, is just a drowned river mouth. So it's a place where it's not really a lake. It's just where the water slows down before it reaches Lake Michigan. But these trees right here, this is all in an area that as of not too long ago was on dry land. You could potentially walk around out here. Lots of geese. These trees out here that are underwater, they're not dead. They're just dormant right now. It's still wintertime-ish. So, and even though it's spring, they just haven't sprouted out leaves yet. They're actually species that are able to withstand the flood. So it looks like several of them are willows. Looks like most of them are willows. Just confirming that. I don't see anything but willows out here at the moment. Sometimes you'll see cottonwoods or something, but these all look like willows. Kind of cool. So if you're maybe a fourth grader and you're studying habitats, you'd call this place a swamp, because you have all these trees right in the water. That's what actually makes it a swamp. Now, if there are any big holes in these trees, this would be perfect for a wood duck. Oh, that's a downy woodpecker that just called behind me. But this little swampy habitat right here is perfect. The trees are well above the water. Anything that has anything that's dead might have holes in it, maybe drilled in by that downy woodpecker, which ends up becoming something that might get bigger over time. and then even have something like a wood duck living in it. Most of the cattails are dormant too. I don't see very much new green leafy growth on this stuff yet. I'd give it another couple of weeks before I'd expect to see any new growth. There's a nice red-winged blackbird. Oh, I didn't get over here earlier. I'm going to check this out, see where it takes me. This is the most water I've seen throughout this habitat. So other birds you might find living in this marsh, besides like the red-winged blackbirds and the Canada geese and the ducks, would be things like a sora. Maybe I'll get a sora. Even if I get it to call, they sound like they're saying their name. They say, sora, sora. And then they go, hopefully that wasn't too loud for you. Then we also have Virginia rails. And flying in here, I think he's out of camera. Oh, shoot. Just coming in beyond the trees. I'm trying to point the boat straight at it. There's a Sandhill crane coming to land in the marsh. He's beyond that tree line from me. Never know. Maybe he'll land in a place where he'll meet another one. And then we'll hear him. They have a really cool kind of rattly call. I don't see, I'm very happy to not see invasive species in here at the moment. There's a highly invasive grass called Phragmites that we're doing our part in the Macatawa Greenway with a lot of our partners to try to eradicate or control it. And this is really cool to see. We don't have any Phragmites in this area. It's a non-native reed grass, and it was brought here because it's an ornamental thing, and people enjoyed put it in their yards. But the problem was it escaped into our wild habitats, and actually it outcompetes our native plants. It can grow easily over 10 feet tall, and it'll grow right out into water. So it creates its own surface to grow. So as opposed to like these cattails that are pretty heavily rooted in there, the Phragmites can grow right out up over water, and it will create its own substrate. So it clogs up the waterways too. It's not eaten by any animals, and it's something that I don't see any, and it's something that we have that does grow, unfortunately, here in the marsh. All right, I'm going to turn around here. Just looking to see if there's a goose over there. There's not. I had a Muskrat Lodge I'm going to paddle you up to check out. It's possible that there's actually a goose that uses it, because a lot of times that's what happens. The goose will use a Muskrat Lodge in the middle. So that big pile of cattail leaves right there, that is a muskrat den or a lodge. And they usually get to it from under the water. So I don't see an opening. Something like a beaver, though totally not a beaver, different animal altogether. They're going to build this lodge, and it's hollowed out in the middle, so they have nice shelter from predators. But they have an underwater entrance to this. So as they're sitting in there, there could be a muskrat in there right now that we don't see. Nope, I'm not hearing any activity either. Sometimes if you get close to a muskrat, they will actually splash their tail at you. They'll do like tail slap, almost like a beaver does. It's a tail slap and a jump all into the water at the same time, and it makes a splash. It's supposed to scare away predators and make you go, oh man, I'm going to stay away from that guy. So I don't see any activity around this one, but I'm pretty sure that looks like pretty new stuff, that is a muskrat lodge. And muskrats will actually eat the cattails. They're an herbivore. But then they'll also use the cattails to make their lodge. Oh, the wind has died down in the last little while. This is great. When I first paddled out here a little while ago, the wind was blowing and it started to rain, and man, I thought, oh man, what a day. It's turning out to be pretty nice. A lot of people in the Holland area don't realize that we have this outstanding marsh right in their backyards. So, I'm looking at the city of Holland in front of me. North side of Holland's behind me. But there's a really healthy marsh that exists right off of Windmill Island. Especially during the summertime, I love coming into here because the cattails end up being like 6 or 8 feet tall. And if you didn't know any better, you'd think you're in the middle of like National Wildlife Refuge. It's pretty outstanding. You can get in here and have really, and because the cattails will block the sound and stuff like that, you'll get out here and you'll feel like you're in the middle of nowhere. You won't hear any traffic. Rarely do you see or hear any other people. And so this is a really cool place to explore. If you have the opportunity in a kayak to come out and explore the Macatawa Marsh, you should do so. The best launch places, there's one at Windmill Island, actually. There's a good launch there. But then we also use the launch over at Window on the Waterfront. It's the far end, so it's the westernmost end of Window on the Waterfront. I think I've heard people call that Van Brott Park. But there's a nice launch there, and you can park right along River Avenue. And those are probably the 2 best places to get in. But the high water level that we have here, you might be able to find other spots too. Because the water level is so high, you could get all the way down into this area too if you were starting further upriver. I chose not to do that today because I wanted to just explore the marsh, but you could have started off quite a far upriver. I don't know if anyone's been on the river yet, know if there's like trees that have fallen down or anything to block your path, but you could certainly start up as far as maybe a Macatawa Green, or excuse me, Paw Paw Park East, I believe it's called, has a launch. You could go all the way up towards Adam Street Landing. That's one of the Ottawa County Park sites, and get into the water. And it's a good paddle. The whole watershed is only about 10 miles from way up into Hudsonville out to Lake Mac. And the pier heads. So it's not a huge watershed, unlike the Grand or the Kalamazoo, let's say, that are quite large watersheds. This is a small one, so you can actually start pretty far upriver. I feel like I've heard people say that they've started off even at the Upper Macatawa Natural Area and floated all the way downriver. It's no white water. Oh, I'm sorry, Goose. I didn't even see you there. Oh, there's some Sandhill Cranes flying in the distance. They're going to come right over. Oh, and they're out of view. They're just above the Holland Energy Park at the moment. I can't quite tell on my screen if you're seeing them or not. But there's 6 Sandhill Cranes. Cool. All right, Geese, I'm going to let you go. I'll get out of here. I'm going to leave the geese alone, and I'm going to keep on working my way through the marsh here. See if I can find my way back. It's kind of like a maze. Fortunately, I can still see some of those landmarks. You know, I can see Windmill Island. Oh, I'm hearing the Sandhill Cranes. I just heard the Sandhill Cranes flying into the marsh do some vocalization. Cool. It sounds like you guys were able to see them. That's great. All right, I'm going to see if I can navigate my way through the marsh here. I left your nest alone. You guys can go back. I didn't even get close enough to see if there's eggs on that Canada goose nest, but I suspect there was, the way that they were protecting it and guarding it and such. All right, I think I see a shot right through the middle of the marsh here. I'm going to take that lane. Oh, jeez. I am so sorry, Goose. And I do see eggs on the nest for that one. Since it flew away so far, I'm going to get you just a quick glance, and then I'll get out of here. Looks like maybe 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 goslings would be coming out of that nest if all those eggs make it. Cool. I didn't even see that goose sitting there. It was being so quiet. Oh, did you hear that? That's the Sora. It went. All right, I'm going to paddle quiet here. Maybe it'll call again. This is a little bird about the size of a robin. Doesn't swim through the water so much as walks on top of the floating cattails and vegetation, looking for invertebrates, frogs, toads, maybe little fish to eat. But they nest right here in the marsh. Oh man, I just passed him. I don't think I saw him, but I saw where he was coming from. I'm going to turn the kayak around. Maybe we'll get a quick glance of him. Hopefully I'm not making anybody out there seasick. Oh, I see another type of a water bird called a coot in front of me. I don't think we're going to be able to pick it up on camera, though, because it's going to be beyond these cattails. No, it floated on. All right, it's going to be right in the front of my kayak in just a moment, beyond these cattails. I think it's going to float through there. There he goes. An American coot floating in the distance there. Overall, kind of like a charcoal gray bird. Has a white beak. And actually, they do kind of like a snorty, grunty call sometimes. But what is most distinct about them as they're floating through, swimming through, is they do this head bob thing. If you can imagine, like people when they're trying to impersonate like a chicken, and they do that head thing back and forth, kind of a bobbing their head back and forth, that's how they're going to swim. And they're not actually a duck. They're in another group of birds, and they actually have duck-like feet. Any ornithologists out there, people who study birds, you'd call them lobed feet. So they're not grasping or clasping feet like a typical bird that you would expect to find on a tree or something, and they're not a webbed foot typical of, say, a duck or a goose. So they're toes that have edges to them that are called lobes, and that allows them to swim so efficiently in the water, but it also lets them be on land, too, if they want. Lots of geese out today, calling away. For any of you that have joined me since I started, I've seen some good stuff today so far. We're seeing swallows in front of us. Those are tree swallows that were flying in front of me a moment ago. We have tree swallows and barn swallows, quite a few of them. That was a tree swallow that just flew through. I'm hearing Sandhill Cranes again. Oh, and I see a little bird, a warbler, called a yellow rumped warbler. I doubt you're going to be able to pick them up, but maybe. Oh, shoot, they're flying. I'm going to see if I can chase one down just a little bit. I'm going to keep it straight in front of me. Little bird hanging out in the cattails. Sometimes they're nicknamed a butterbutt. Oh, he just flew left. A yellow rumped warbler. He's only about a foot off of the water, hanging out in the cattails, looking for bugs to eat. There you go. Straight ahead of me now in that first clump of cattails. A warbler called a yellow rumped warbler. There he goes. So we got a warbler. We have 3 species of swallows. We have, of course, red-winged blackbirds, but we also had common grackles. It's a bigger blackbird, has a shiny kind of purpley head on the adults. And then Canada geese, mallard ducks, American coot. Oh, that was a barn swallow, or excuse me, rough-winged swallow that just went past me. It had a brown throat versus a white throat. Tree swallows have a white throat. That one had a brown throat. That was a northern rough-winged swallow. And then one of the very first birds I saw today, actually, I was out looking at, that's a swallow, that's a rough-winged swallow, straight ahead. Was an owl flying out over the marsh, sometimes called a marsh owl, the short-eared owl. And it was really cool to see. It was actually flying out over the cattails, and then it lifted off of the marsh and was flying up in the air easily a couple hundred feet off of the cattails, just flying with gulls. And so unless you were really paying attention, you'd just think it was a gull, but it was not. it was an owl called a short-eared owl, an endangered species in the state of Michigan. So pretty exciting to see it here in the Macatawa Marsh. It's not completely unlikely. It is a species that's been seen around here, but the fact that it's an endangered species, not seen every day, and only a couple of times a year at best is my guess. Pretty cool to find. All right. Now we're going downriver. Again, I've got Windmill Island kind of behind my back right shoulder. I have downtown Holland immediately to my left. And I'm paddling parallel to the park called Window on the Waterfront. This is where I had earlier a mute swan. I'm going to stay away from the mute swans. We talked about the Phragmites grass a little bit ago. It's a non-native species of grass called Phragmites or common reed grass, which fortunately I had not seen. But the mute swan's not native either. Actually, that's really problematic. They outcompete. They're so aggressive. They outcompete our native species of geese and ducks, and there's actually even swans that they outcompete. And it is not unlikely, as much as you guys would enjoy it, for them to be very aggressive if there's nests to attack a kayaker. Fortunately, I think it's too early for them to have a nest. There you go. We see an American coot straight in front of me. See if you can watch it as it swims. It'll do that head bob thing back and forth. Just a little bit of a bang, 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 back and forth head bob. Not chasing you, buddy. I saw a wood duck over here just a moment ago. Ooh. Did you guys notice how he ran across the top of the water? So that's a really cool feature. If you ever see a duck do that, it's because the legs are so far back on their body. They're really good swimmers, but their legs are so far positioned back on their bodies that they can't just lift off the ground like a goose or a duck can. So a coot, like a grebe, they actually have to run over the top of the water in order to get enough lift to fly. So that was pretty fun to see him. Turn the corner around these cattails. I was hoping to get you guys a look at a sora. Oh, we do also have Virginia rail. I did hear one before, but I didn't see it. I just heard it. They have a very distinct call. It's like a kind of like a clicking call. Oh, there's another goose. I'm sorry, dude. I missed you. Did not mean to scare you. Fortunately, I think it was just sitting in the marsh here. I don't see a nest where it was coming from. I don't want to disturb them. Let's see if we can get through the cattails here without going too wild. Oh, I just heard another sora again. Well, there's a duck, a mallard duck that just went through there. I think I can get through this spot. All right, I'm going to pull myself through so I don't knock the phone off the front of the kayak. Again, my wife would be sad if I did that. I'd be sad if I did that. Oh, come on. There we go. No duck nest. Just ducks hanging out in the marsh. Some of the other wild species that we have here, if you come out into the Macatawa Marsh in the summertime, you can see some wildflowers. We have a plant called spatter dock. It's a pretty yellow flower. It's a lily, so it's like a yellow. Those are common grackles that just went by. It's a yellow flower, about the size of maybe it's like a golf ball that grow out here, along with the white. Oh, there was a coot nest behind me, I think. I hear him running across the water. So distracted. I feel like the dog in Up. Some of you know me, probably would agree. So the spatter dock, that yellow golf ball-like size flower. You have the white water lily. You have arrow arum, which is another native plant that grows here in the marsh. I think I've seen some pickerel weed here as well. So these are all species of plants that produce seeds that they're well adapted to being in this kind of a habitat, where they have a seed that floats, they have the ability to be flooded and it doesn't kill them. So just like the cattails, this is perfect habitat. And the cattails do get trimmed back. Now that we have these high water times, this is where the muskrats are loving it. They have all these lodges. I've easily seen about 15 lodges. And so the cattails are going to be trimmed back by the muskrats. So it's great to see high water, because now the cattails are going to get trimmed back, and then people will, be able to get up into the marsh a little bit more. I've never been in this part of the marsh with it being so very open. Again, I'm going to turn my kayak here so you can see. I really haven't gone that far. You can see Windmill Island in the distance there. You can see Deswan Windmill. I'm going to go down just a little ways further. We'll go down towards the River Avenue Bridge. Any of you familiar with that? That's one of the places you can put in pretty easily. You've got to park your car right along River Avenue and then walk down your boat. But it's not too far. Especially if you have two people, it's easy. What I haven't seen yet or heard yet, I'm surprised to, is a Marsh Wren. So just like you might expect to see wrens in your backyard, like a house wren, or this time of the year you see in migration a winter wren if you're a bird watcher. The Marsh Wren's actually, it's one of those species that's not quite critical species, but it's a species that's an indicator. So the fact that we have marsh wrens in this habitat, it's a declining species, it's a good thing. It's signifying that there's some healthy habitat here. Just watching another yellow rumped warbler in this mass of cattails, just a little bit right of center. You can maybe pick out his butterbutt. So the yellow rumped warblers are all over the place. In the last week, they've really just come out of the woodwork, so to speak, but literally out of the south. We did not do any management in the marsh this year. We occasionally will do prescribed fire here in the marsh with the help of a contractor as well as the local fire departments. That is something that maybe some of you have seen in the past. We've done prescribed fire here in the marsh. We've also done some aerial spraying, which is something where you use a chemical that is it's a controlled chemical that we have permission to use. We have applicators' licenses to use it, that it kills all the vegetation. So if you wanted to knock back, say, cattails in a particular area, or the Phragmites, which I'm just barely picking up a little bit, a hint of Phragmites in the distance. I'm not certain the camera's going to be able to pick it up. There's a stand of plants straight ahead from me beyond the cattails, where I'm seeing kind of the broom-like bristly tops of those Phragmites. And so there's a little cluster of it, and it's probably a colony. So if we were to, say, bring in a helicopter sprayer, we could come in and drop a very localized application of this chemical that would kill the Phragmites, or at least knock it back in that area. So you wouldn't have to spray the entire marsh. That's not ideal. You don't want to kill everything. What you want to do is try to reduce the impact of those non-native species. I'm going to test the depth of the water here quick. This is an area where, like I was saying, it's... Oh, look at that. So I would say my water depth right now is probably about 4 feet, and then it gets to a nice mucky layer. And if I pushed my paddle down, I probably dropped another maybe 8 or 10 inches into that mucky layer. So there is a good bit of water in here. When we have winds coming out of the west, actually the marsh fills up a little bit more. Any of you that drive from, like I do, from the north side to the south side of Holland on a regular basis, you might see those fluctuations. If you live along Lake Macatawa, you might see those fluctuations. And I'd say on a daily basis there might be 4 to 6 inches on a railing. So where I'm talking about the boat launch at Window on the Waterfront, I drive past that every day, and I kind of gauge how high the water is by looking at how high the water looks compared to the 2x4 railing that's kind of submerged at this point. So there are days where the 2x4 is completely out of the water, like by 4 to 6 inches, and then there are times where it's only about 1 inch of the 2x4 is exposed from the water. So there's a pretty wide fluctuation that exists, both from rainfall. This is a river that has a lot of water flowing into it very fast at times, so they call it a flashy river, where there are huge volumes of water about 24 to 36 hours after a rainstorm, and so you get like kind of localized flooding. But then also when you have a west wind, you push water up from Lake Macatawa, from Lake Michigan into Lake Macatawa, and then into the marsh here. So what I'm trying to creep up on is, I think, an osprey. So straight in front of me on the top of a dead tree is a bird that's perched. I don't know if any of you can pick that up. It's an osprey. I'm going to turn my kayak just a touch more, try to get a look at him. It's not big enough to be an eagle, but this is a bird called an osprey. They're actually in their own group of birds of prey. Oh yeah, definitely it is. I just saw him turn. He's opened up his wings. Oh my gosh, totally lied. Bald eagle. I couldn't see the white head and tail, and it didn't look big enough to be a bald eagle, but that's totally what it was. So there you go. We have a bald eagle that likes to frequent the marsh here. I know I see him, as well as the osprey. Actually, did you know bald eagles are kind of lazy? They'll actually watch for a osprey to catch food, and then they'll go and steal it from the osprey. They have a really low percentage rate of success, a bald eagle does, in catching fish and prey, whereas the osprey has a very high percentage rate. So they just wait for the osprey to catch something, and then they go steal it. Osprey are like a woodpecker or a parrot or an owl, and then they have the zygodactyl arrangement of their toes. 2 toes forward, 2 toes back. So if you've ever seen an osprey flying with the fish, it actually holds the fish so it's aerodynamic from head to tail going into the wind. And it holds it so that it's 2 toes on one side, 2 toes on the other. Kind of a cool arrangement of its toes, allowing it to have that adaptation. So I always tell kids, it's kind of like if you can imagine if your pinky could be as versatile as your thumb. If you could make your pinky do everything your thumb could for like grasping and stuff, that would be like an osprey or an owl or a parrot or even a woodpecker. All right, so there you go. We see the old stacks of the old power plant. Straight on there, I'm looking at River Avenue, Blue Bridge you can see in the distance. And then there's water, the window on the waterfront park is that park that's all in front of me there. Oh, and I see a yellow legs, it's called. Let me see, I've got to watch it. It's straight in front of me there, flying left. Gotta hear it to know. It's just doing 2, 2. If it went 2, 2, 2, that would have been better for me, but I'm pretty sure that that was a lesser yellow legs. So you can identify those things by their sounds. Just like a songbird, you can identify certain species by their calls. Okay, well, I think I'm about through here. I'll give you guys a minute to process or so and see if you have any questions about the Macatawa Marsh. Before I sign off, I'll let you ask any questions. I hope you enjoyed paddling with me today, our virtual paddle of the Macatawa Marsh. A little breezy this morning, but on the whole, it's been a good paddle. Some good wildlife. I heard a sora. We just saw that lesser yellow legs. We had a bald eagle a moment ago. Lots of geese. A few ducks, some coots. Lots of swallows. Earlier on, I had a short-eared owl. I was pretty geeked about that. I wish it had been while I was on camera, because I probably would have been a little bit more excited. I was excited nonetheless, but it would have been funny to see myself get really excited about the short-eared owl while in the kayak. All right. Well, thank you all. I'm going to turn the camera. Thank you all for paddling with me today, taking a virtual tour of the Macatawa Marsh. I hope that you enjoyed your paddle and you get a chance to explore the marsh on your own. Remember, this is a place you can come down to. There's put-in spots at Windmill Island. There's a put-in at Window on the Waterfront Park, and it's a really fun place to go to. The biggest thing, it's not a bad current. The biggest thing is wind. So if you happen to not be a strong paddler, maybe go on a day that's a little less windy. I personally enjoy just kind of getting up into the marsh and exploring to see what kind of wildlife I can find. If you do happen to get into the marsh, be nice to the ducks and the geese and all that kind of stuff. You know, try not to scare them if you can. Take a look, but don't bother their nesting. All right. I hope you all had a great time exploring in the marsh with me. Look forward to seeing you at Outdoor Discovery Center, DeGraff Nature Center, one of our parks, maybe like, say, Rabbit River Preserve. And enjoy the day, everybody. Have a good one. Bye-bye.